What is the Mandela Effect? In order to explain to you what the Mandela Effect is, I actually felt like opening ChatGPT, prompting it to tell me what it understands as the Mandela Effect. And it actually, even without me prompting it to, it gave me three different theories. Hold on a second. First of all, an explanation, and I'm going to read this to you because this is a great reflection of where humanity is at with this, and especially the first explanation, or the first theory, as it's called, would be the currently accepted one by most of humanity, by science, by the mainstream. So first of all, the Mandela Effect, this is now in my words. The Mandela Effect is simply a difference in perception of a memory. It is a difference in memory. Something happened this way. I remember it this way. You remember it that way. So if you go to, let's say, a family event, and you are there with your family members, obviously, and whatever happens with the food, whatever happens, someone drops a plate, and then after that happened, so especially when some time has passed, which makes it a memory, right? If something is 10 seconds ago, it's also a memory, but it is so recent that most people will just talk about the now. So once you create a distance through time and space, that's when memory truly kicks in, and you will be able to talk about how do you remember that? Family member dropped plate. You are of the opinion that this plate was blue, and another family member is like, no, it was a white plate, it was this plate. And so these are two opposing, seemingly, they're just different, but seemingly opposing viewpoints based on memory, which then easily leads to conflict, or can easily lead to conflict, especially the more emotionally charged the whole thing is, and the more people are unwilling to accept that there are different viewpoints, speaking of being narrow-minded, and always wanting to be right, which is a not so wonderful trait of the human ego. In the pursuit of truth, who's correct here? And is it the blue plate? Is it the white plate? Another family member says, no, it was a red plate, or it was a cup. Actually, it wasn't even a plate. So who is correct? Now, different memories, same situation, or seemingly the same situation, I should say here, to already get a bit more towards the truth of it. Seemingly the same situation, remembered and interpreted differently by different individuals. And since we live in a time of science, which is evidence-based, I quote unquote this because I used to be hugely into science. I used to use my big head to read a lot of studies, to compute a lot of information and data, until I realized how incredibly limiting that is, and how narrow-minded it is to believe that you can recreate reality the same way every time. It's just never going to change. Once you have a little bit of a spiritual awakening, you realize that everything always changes, and that everything is a flow of energy. Now, with that said, which also gets us closer to the truth of what the Mandela Effect is. Why is it called the Mandela Effect? Because Nelson Mandela, if you don't know who that is, please look it up, was believed to have died in a prison in the 1980s, which, according to, if you go to Wikipedia or probably any history book you can find, or other resource, no, he did go to prison. Yes, he didn't die in there. He was released in 1990 or the 90s or whatever. He actually died in 2013, so decades later. But a lot of people believe that Nelson Mandela died in prison. So, a false memory. Interesting point. False memory in this day and age would also be called, or could be called, fake news. So, now with that said, here's another few examples to make this clear to you. The Monopoly man, some recall him having a monocle, but he never did. I personally remember that he did. On the box of the game that we had from the, early 90s, I believe, there was a guy there with a big monocle. I know that for sure. According to this here, I'm not correct. According to this here, a lot of other people who believe the same thing and remember the same thing are not correct either. One example. Another example. Star Wars. Luke, I am your father, what Darth Vader tells Luke Skywalker. I've never been usually into Star Wars, so I wouldn't exactly be adamant about this is how I remember it. This is certainly how I have come to know it from culture or pop culture. But actually, the actual quote in Star Wars is, "No, I am your father." Again, I wouldn't get into a discussion about this because I'm just not into Star Wars enough. But the point is, with all this, who's right, who's wrong? See, this is a wonderful way of the universe to guide us towards truth and to guide us towards acceptance and tolerance and allowing of different opinions, memories, whatever you want to call it, different experiences. And if someone has a differing worldview to yours, are you going to fight that? I mean, that's basically what human history is all about. We have a different view of the world. We have a different religion, economic system, language, idea of the world, ideology. Now let's go to war about it. Why go to war about it? Because seemingly it's an opposing idea. Communism, capitalism, Christianity, Islam, and all the other examples you want to give. Dark side of the Force and the Jedi. Use the Star Wars example. And so the more you come to allow others, which also means to allow yourself, that they are truly entitled to believe whatever the heck they want. Or as I always like to say, to sound a bit fancy and to make fun of it, it's anyone's prerogative to believe whatever they want. It's their right to believe whatever they want. And if they want to believe that there's pink unicorns flying across their yard, I might not see it, but I'm also not going to disagree with it, because why not? People can believe whatever they want to believe. People can live in the world that they want to live in. Now, based on how I live my life, I've been seeking the truth since I was a small child. When I was 4 years old, I realized I just had this intuitive feeling. I knew there's something wrong with this world. The more I started to first form my idea of truth and speaking my truth unfiltered, my parents weren't a big fan of it, because it led to certain situations that societally and socially were not acceptable. We all know how that works. I quickly came to realize, okay, the truth is clearly not wanted here. But then again, what is the truth? Is it my truth? Is it your truth? Is it this person's truth? Whatever. Truth in itself is a changing construct. That is what you have to understand. There is no such thing as, oh, I found the truth and it will never change. That is human ego. That is a narrow-minded view of wanting to fix everything in place. That is like having a beautiful flowing river and putting a dam in it turns into a pond. It's starting to stink, but at least you have your water now. You can't drink it. You can't do anything with it. You might be able to fish some fish, but you change the nature of the river, which is pure flow, which gives fresh water, life, minerals, supplies, miles and miles and kilometers of nature with life. And then we stop that in an effort to control it. Controlling the narrative. Now this brings us to, how is the Mandela Effect? And here come the theories, or what ChatGPT came up with as possible explanations. Memory errors. The most accepted explanation is simply that human memory is fallible and easily influenced. Well, that's true, for sure. Most people are so easily influenced, they don't even know that they're influenced because they're so ignorant. They believe that their opinions are theirs, while all they do all day is watch CNN. But to each their own. Parallel universe, theory number 2. parallel universes. Some believe it's evidence of alternate realities bleeding into each other. That's a good one. And the last one, and this is a bit influenced by me using ChatGPT with memory function on, so it's my personal cat companion. And obviously answers questions based on what it knows, what I do, who I am, what I need help with. Timeline shifts or glitches, like the glitch in the Matrix when the cat comes with the deja vu twice. In spiritual or metaphysical circles, sometimes viewed as signs of shifting timeline or ascension-related changes in reality perception. That is by far the closest one. Number 2 is really good with parallel universes, but in my opinion, that's still very generic. The last one is very much aligned with what I will tell you it is. Let's do that again. In spiritual metaphysical circles, sometimes viewed as signs of shifting timelines or ascension-related changes in reality perception. Exactly. Now, what does that mean? It means that it's a guide and it's guidance towards truth, which is you create your reality. You create your reality. How you perceived reality as a child in another lifetime, speaking of true history and true remembering, this idea, I always laugh to this day, even as a child. When I first heard of this idea that had been accepted by humanity, that pyramids are tombs of pharaohs, I was like, I can't explain why, but it just doesn't feel right. That was one of my first thoughts when I read this in a book when I was almost 7-8 years old. In this day and age, I can explain to you exactly what the pyramids are, not the topic of this video, but they were most definitely not tombs of pharaohs. That might have been what at the very end of the Egyptian Empire, which was way past what it truly was, when the pyramids were created with pure telekinesis and the power of the mind. That was very much what Egypt was all about in the days of Cleopatra, Isis, Cyrus, and so on. Which is why these entities are considered gods, because to a 3D human, those are absolutely godlike powers. To a 4D human that exists entirely in 4D and has never known 3D, that's just reality. You just create everything with your mind. And if that means cutting a stone into a certain way with your mind, then that is that. There's many examples of that through anime and fiction and comics and whatever. It's always ascribed to superhero powers. Well, those superhero powers are, of course, just a guide towards our own powers. Why else watch that? Why else be interested in it? Why else dream about it? So, the Mandela Effect, to wrap this all up, is the difference in reality perception. Memory is different for everyone. Even if we sit together at dinner, you and I and some other people, we all agree that this steak tastes exactly this way and this tomato tastes, we describe it, we use 1,000 words to describe how this thing looks and tastes and the texture of it and what the chef has done with it and so on and so forth. Even when we completely agree, our reality will still be different. Even if it's just a little bit, it will still be different. Why? Because every being is unique. I always say this because this is one of the most fundamental truths that humanity has to wake up to. Your soul, you as a being, you are unique. There's no one in the entire universe like you. Now, if you, of course, suppress your soul and try to be like others, and those others try to be like you, of course, they're not going to admit that, or in most cases, they won't admit that unless it's fashionable because it's Brad Pitt or whatever people consider to be enviable and to be like. Every single time you do that, that's fine when you're a child or a teenager, even though I would say it's not fine. It's just testimony to how broken society is and how much children are not taught the right thing from the get-go, very much the opposite. But that's the system. When you express yourself as your divine self, your soul, who you truly are, everything you do will be unique. You might have the same iPhone model like your friend, but the way you use it, the way you interact with it, the way you view it, the way you feel about it, the way you think about it, the way you charge it, the way you use the camera, it's all going to be unique to you. And if it isn't, and you conform, and this is now the final point, and this is the most important point with regards to humanity and with regards to shadow work, if you conform your opinion to the majority think in a sole attempt to fit in and to not stand out and to, oh, let's just all hide behind each other's fears and let's pretend that we're not all lonely. If you're in a room with 100 people, most people would agree that moment you're not lonely. At least you're not alone. You're not alone. You might feel lonely. If you are in a group of 100 people and you chat to each other and you all talk to each other and everyone's engaged with each other, then everyone agrees that you're not alone, you're not alone. But if you are connecting with these people over alcohol because you think you have to, because you are deathly afraid to be alone and thus deathly afraid to be lonely, which makes you lonely, the fear of whatever you fear is exactly what you are. What you hope not to be is what you are. And with the Mandela Effect bringing us to current 2025 idea of what media is and what's been called the mainstream media, legacy media, whatever. Mainstream is a better term, at least for the purpose of this video, because it's the mainstream. It's where everyone or vast majority goes. That's what makes it the mainstream. And there's side streams, there's different perceptions of reality. And people, for example, what came up in this last year is this flat earth paradigm. It's a different way to look at reality. If all you have to say to that is, oh, that's just proven by science and we know better now. Well, think again, because science has decades ago reached its absolute limit of perception and its absolute limit of consciousness. Whenever there is a breakthrough in this day and age, it might still be called science, but it's actually not science. That's a topic for a different video and for a different time. The Mandela Effect is, in essence, to sum it all up and conclude it, different perceptions of reality across time. And because time is not a linear thing, it hasn't been a linear thing in a very long time on planet Earth. Different data points across time, let's say, to speak a bit scientific. Well, I can't do it. I just usually choose not to. But whatever. Different points in time can be changed and altered in hindsight. If you think about the reality of changing your perception and your memory, and again, Mandela Effect, if you, in your heart, know absolutely it to be true that it is this way, that plate was blue, not white, wasn't a cup, was blue. And you're going to acquiesce to someone else and change your truth for them, even though in your heart you know this is the truth that you perceive. This is the truth that you know. That's the moment you buy into the lie. There is no ultimate truth. There is no singular truth. There is no, this is the evidence and that's all there is. What good is science with peer reviews and we all need to check on each other's veracity and reliability of information when everyone thinks alike anyways, and it's a predestined outcome and the narrative has already been decided based on human factors like what they call peer pressure, fear of not fitting in, and so on and so forth. The people who make the biggest change and the biggest positive impact, I should say, also the biggest negative impact if you think about serial killers and so on, but the people who make the biggest impact are those who do not conform to the majority think, who are willing to go outside of that and ideally look for ways to make it better that everyone in this mainstream cannot see and perceive because they got blinders on. The horses can see what's happening here because the horses can only see this here. They have tunnel vision. The Mandela Effect is a great way to understand reality and truth, and ultimately that everyone's reality and perception of which is different. And to fight over that is ultimately futile, because you're not going to, even if you force someone into submission of what you want them to believe, that's one of the most human things ever. If you want to force someone to believe what you believe, it will not be true, because you needed to use force. It didn't come from an allowing, it didn't come from love, it didn't come from truthful existence. And the Mandela Effect is a great way to remember that, to remember that different realities and different people have different perceptions of reality, of different realities too. Which brings us also to what ChatGPT said. There are different timelines. Not only can you change points in one timeline, you can also change timelines. That is why this has been such a huge topic in movies and books for the last few decades, and ever more so.